Before I proceed with showing you how to factor using ratios, I just want to go over where the ratio method came from. It actually came from the decomposition method. So I'm going to take this example of 2x squared plus 7x plus 3, and I'm going to factor using the decomposition method two different ways. And to begin, I need to determine the product and the sum. In this case, the product is 6, sum is 7. The two numbers that satisfy that product and sum are 6 and 1. In the first case, I'm going to rewrite 7x with 6x appearing first, followed by 1x. And then I'm going to factor by grouping to give me 2x times x plus 3 plus 1 times x plus 3. Next, I'm going to remove the common binomial factor of x plus 3, which would leave me with another factor of 2x plus 1. I'm going to do this one more time, but this time, instead of writing 7x as 6x plus 1x, I'm going to write it as 1x plus 6x, just in a different order here. I'm going to factor by grouping, so I can remove x, leaving me with 2x plus 1. And then for the second pair, I can remove a positive 3, leaving me with 2x plus 1. And then the final factored form would be 2x plus 1 times x plus 3. Now notice that the two factors that I get, regardless in which order I put these two terms, are the same. Okay? The factors can be multiplied in any order, so they would give us the same final answer. That's one thing to notice. Next, I want you to pay attention to the numbers here, 2 and 6. I can write those numbers in a ratio. So 2 to 6 in a ratio. In lowest terms, that ratio is 1 to 3. Where do we see the numbers 1 to 3? Well, here 1 is implied, and here's the 3. So if I form a ratio using the leading coefficient of x squared here, followed by one of the numbers that I obtained that satisfied my product and sum, and then put them in lowest terms, I will obtain the numbers that would appear in my first factor. If I look at this example here, and I focus on the first two numbers, so the leading coefficient of x squared here, and 1, which is the second number that I got from satisfying the product and the sum. If I write that in a ratio in lowest terms, it would remain as 2 and 1. And here I see 2 and 1 appearing in this factor here. So that's where the ratio method comes from. You can skip these intermediate steps. All you have to do is write ratios using the leading coefficient and the numbers that you came up with from the product and sum, putting them in those terms, and then rewriting them inside the factors. So let's look at some examples here. In the first example, we have 5x squared plus 8x minus 4. We still have to come up with the numbers that satisfy the product and sum. So product in this case is negative 20, and the sum is positive 8. So the two numbers that satisfy that product and sum will be positive 10 and then negative 2. Okay? So now I'm going to write my ratios using this leading coefficient of 5. My first ratio would be 5 to positive 10. And my second ratio would be 5 to negative 2. I'm going to put these ratios in lowest terms. These two numbers are divisible by 5. So I get 1 and 2 as the lowest form here, and this will stay as 5 negative 2. It's already in lowest terms. So these are the two numbers that will appear in the first factor, and these will appear in the second factor. Now, since my first term starts with x squared, that means each of these first numbers have to be followed by an x. So my factored form is simply going to be 1x, which I'll just write as x, plus 2 times 5x minus 2. And that would be the final answer. Okay, let's look at this example. The product here is 12, and the sum is negative 8. The two numbers that satisfy that product and sum are negative 6 and negative 2. Writing the ratios, beginning with the leading coefficient of 3, I get 3 to negative 6, and then 3 to negative 2. Putting those ratios in lowest terms, I get 1 to negative 2, and this one happens to stay the same. It's not always that the second ratio will stay the same. Sometimes you'll have to reduce it. Now, taking note of the variables, I have x squared in the first term. That means each of the first numbers here will have to be followed by x. My last term had a y squared. That means each of these last two numbers will be followed by y. So the factored form would look like this. I would have x minus 2y times 3x minus 2y.